This episode of Bulletproof Cash Flow is brought to you by Realty Dynamics. Learn how people like you can build substantial passive income while creating wealth for the long term through real estate investing. Visit rdyne.com. That's RDYNE.com.
I just lunged on this guy because I only had 45 minutes with this guy. And I lunged in on him and he just said, listen, you need to shut up and stop. He goes, let's deal with your out of integrities. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, first of all, let's look at the sign on the wall. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not a registered guest of this hotel. You stuck me in because you couldn't afford to buy breakfast. So let's just deal with that out of integrity.
Working because you want to, not because you have to, is financial freedom. And we want to help you create that. Welcome to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We're going to teach you how to achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host is a multifamily syndicator and property developer. He's done deals reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You'll hear from experts in all aspects of real estate investment, finance, development, and management. Everything you need is right here. This is the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. And this is your host, Augustino Pintus.
Hi, everyone. It's Augustino. Whether you're starting off in your first business or you're an experienced entrepreneur, you're bound to get kicked around a lot on your journey to building your personal and business goals. Now, the thing is, success is not something you pursue. Rather, it is something you attract into your life because of the person you become. And when you surround yourself with the right people and get the right guidance, you will increase your income. You're going to transform your obstacles into cash flow and turn your passion into profits. Now, this is something that our next guest has done throughout his career. For over 23 years, he has traveled over 4 continents. He's personally trained over 1 million people in over 48 countries. Now, he's mentored entrepreneurs and business owners on specific and measurable strategies to increase their success by uncovering the hidden assets and their possibilities. Now, today, he is a board member of EXP Holdings, where he was involved with helping bring the company public. EXP is now valuated at over $6 billion. Yeah, that EXP. Now, he's also a top international corporate trainer, having trained he's trained 157 of the Fortune 500 companies as well. Now, his talent has been captured by many other publications like the Wall Street Journal, Yahoo Finance, NBC, CBS, numerous print and media communication outlets as well. So he's got a lot of attention on him. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Until I Become. It's available at all major book outlets. Definitely check that out. Go ahead and download it after this. Okay, now with all that, I'd like to welcome my new good friend, Darren Jacklin, to the show. Darren, buddy, thanks for coming on, man.
I'm grateful to be here. Thanks a lot for allowing the opportunity to make a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Now, guys, if you'd like to reach out to Darren, you can reach him at his website, darrenjacklin.com. We'll include a link in the description, all right? So, Jacklin. So, Darren. Darren, go ahead. Tell us a little bit more about you and about your background and your journey.
Yeah, I've got an interesting backstory. I'll just share with your listeners. I grew up in a middle-income family. Went to public school. In grade 1, I was misdiagnosed with a learning disability and a reading disability. I failed grade 1 of public school, and then it was determined that I was special education and probably retarded as well. And so I spent from grade 1 to grade 12 in special education classes in public school. So I never went to regular normal school like most of the other kids did. And I was really bored in school. By the age of 7, really young age, some of you who have children thinking, my 7-year-old or 8-year-old, I created my first company called Rent a Kid. And I grew up in a place called Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada, a city of population of less than 20,000 people in the prairies of Canada. And so I went out and I cut grass. I shoveled snow in the wintertime. I delivered the Regina Leader-Post newspaper 6 days a week in my neighborhood. And I was always looking for ways to solve problems in my community. What was I solving for? I was looking for opportunity zones. And so by the time I was 9 years of age, I hired 2 of my best friends, which 40 years later, we're still in good speaking terms. We still communicate through social media every now and then, checking on each other. It's amazing, those long-term relationships, which I love. And really, it's interesting. So I went off from there, barely passed public high school. I did graduate, and then left Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada, to a place called Vernon, British Columbia, Canada, which is here in Western Canada. And I did multiple suicide attempts to end my life. I had no direction. I had no focus. I had no roadmap to where I wanted to go with my life. And on my final attempt, by driving my car at 85 miles an hour, 140 kilometers an hour towards a telephone pole, I decided to stop the car and said, I just can't do it. So I drove in to a nonprofit organization that was a 24-hour telephone crisis line prevention organization. This is back in the 1990s. Rang their doorbell, a lady came out and she's going to help you. I said, I'm here to turn myself in. I'm trying to attempt suicide. So they started to offer me some counseling services. And then from there, the lady introduced me to a Dale Carnegie training program. And I didn't know what this was about. So I went there and signed up for this program, ended up taking it over the next few months, and it transformed my life. And through the Dale Carnegie training program, I met a woman who then introduced me to Toastmasters International, which is the largest public speaking leadership organization on the planet. It's been around for many decades. And those two organizations were pivotal and transformational in my life, which I highly recommend because it shaped me by my environment, my mindset. And then from there, I got mentored and trained, developed by different people who said, Darren, I believe that you can become a world-class professional speaker. Why people believe more in me than I believed in myself back at the time. And so through a lot of perseverance, a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, a lot of rejection, between 1995 and the year 2000, I made over 100,000 cold calls. Sometimes I was 3, 4, 5 months behind on paying my bills, my rent, completely out of integrity. I was hustling and grinding. And from that, it built me into a global corporate training business where, I said in my introduction, I trained over 1 million people. And so I still travel to some degree and speak and train. Behind the scenes, I do a lot of mergers and acquisitions. I acquire real estate. I'm actively and passively involved in a number of companies. I've got a portfolio of businesses we're building and a portfolio of real estate. And I've dedicated my life now through our private family foundation to $100 million over the next decade towards global philanthropy projects through Link Foundation. And so between serving on 3 different high-profile paid boards of directors and, building income-producing assets and working in the foundation, I live a great life today. And I'm grateful for who I've become in this journey because it's been a lot of peaks and valleys. I've made a ton of mistakes. And I've learned a lot from the street. And so now when I do things, I do things right because I have a daily plan and strategy and I process map and things like that. But I've learned from making a lot of mistakes what to do and what not to do at this stage and age in my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy you're still around. I'm happy you're still with us here. I think you make the world a better place. That's for sure. And actually, I had the chills when you were explaining how you're about to hit that pole and you stop the car. I mean, we've all been there in one way, shape, or form. I know I have. I've faced some of those times when you don't really have any type of vision, you have no plan, you have no track. You kind of you think that that's an option, right? But I think one thing that really stood out, though, that's something that you actually do now, is that you define what you want your life to look like. Meaning, and in the sense of you're sitting down and you're living life on purpose, so to speak. Like you're drafting. What does your day look like? What do your goals look like? For instance, something that you mentioned, right? Talk a little bit more about that. Like what is that process? What's involved with that?
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. So every Sunday I have scheduled into my calendar my weekly planning. So this is my quarterly plan. I like to print things off. I'm old school. I still like paper. I do have digital copies as well. But every Sunday, I sit down and it's time blocked in my calendar where I go through my weekly plan from Sunday to Saturday of each calendar week. And then I go through, the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right through to Saturday, and I plan it out in my calendar. And then I also look at contingency plans. So what could possibly go wrong this week? If I'm traveling, could there be road construction, flight delays, motor vehicle accidents, weather delays, things like that. So I speculate and I just, think about scenario planning, what could possibly go wrong? And people say, well, why would you spend that time and energy in terms of that planning? Well, the key thing is our word is powerful. And most people, you hear in business that talk is cheap. I think really that most people cheapen their talk. They don't realize the power of their word or words that they speak. And without integrity, nothing works. There's just no workability. And so I've really learned to be really on time. Like that's a big thing for me. If I give my word to something, it's a done deal. Like it's just my word is, and I've learned from experience and trial and error over the years that it's kind of like when you have a party and you invite a group of people on your guest list. And if I ask you to come and you're like, yeah, I'll be on this date and time, it's a done deal. I don't have to remind you. There's no calendar invite. There's no text message. There's no email. There's no virtual assistant following up with you. It's a done deal. You'll show up on place on time. If something should happen unexpectedly, you'll be in advanced communication and let me know. Other people think, man, do I have to send them a calendar invite? Do I have to send them a text message, an email? I have to put them into some kind of autoresponder thing? Like it goes on. It takes up mental time and energy. So I've really learned in my life just to be my word. And so I plan things out in my weekly calendar. And then I look at what are my high leverage activities this week and what are my low leverage activities. So anything that's high leverage activity that fulfills me, that energizes me, that gives me a return on energy, ROE, return on energy, I focus on doing those tasks. Whatever tasks I would procrastinate on or hesitate on or not want to do, I delegate them off. And here's something I discovered through my years of experience. Most of your goals don't require your actions. Think about that for a moment. Most of your goals don't require your actions. As a solo entrepreneur for many years, I did everything all by myself. The buck stops with me. And so I always had to be in control of everything, all the moving tasks during the day-to-day operations, everything I did during the waking hours of my day. Now I realize that I delegate the responsibility, but I still maintain the control. So I go from doing to directing. So we live in a world today of technology where you can automate, you can systemize, you can outsource, you can virtualize, you can move things off. You don't have to do all these tasks. And so one of the things I've discovered is it's about creating teams and teamwork. Now, I was never a team player growing up because I was always one of these kids in school who was always picked last for any sports team. I didn't trust people growing up because I was one of these odd, weird kids that was in special education growing up as a kid. But what I've discovered from trial and error and making a lot of mistakes over time was that if you want to grow and scale, you've got to create teams. Stay in your lane. I stay in my lane. Sometimes I get calls or emails or texts from people say, hey, Darren, can you help me with this? I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I stay in my lane. I stay focused. And so that comes back to a weekly plan of planning things out, but then also knowing what are you solving for? Like, what's the bigger vision? So my weekly plans become my quarterly becomes 6 month, and then yearly, and then a decade plan. And then I work up much further than that. So the key thing is to look at most people, if you ask them, what are you doing? There's no written plan. Like I have, for example, I'll show you here. I have, these are my top 10 personal promises to myself. So this is what I give my word to every year. And every, October, November, December, I start to speculate and think about the next year, what I want to dedicate and commit my life to. And so these are my top 10 personal promises to myself. And then I have my core habits, right? My core values, and then what I cherish and treasure about Tatiana, who's in my relationship with me. So every day I write out my personal promises. So I don't call them goals. I don't call them dreams. I call them my personal promises to myself. Because I learned that years ago, when you make a personal promise to yourself, it's intimate. It resonates at the cells of who you are as a human being. When I have a goal, it's out there, but a personal promise is here. And so I write out every day in my journal as a non-negotiable daily habit, my top 10 personal promises to myself. Every day, it's a non-negotiable habit. And that's what I do every single day. And then I think about what are my top 3 highest leverage activities I'm going to do today. And another thing I do every week that I schedule into my calendar is thinking time. I discovered this many years ago, to stop and think about what you're thinking about. See, most people don't think what they're thinking about. So they're just reoccurring thoughts all the time. And so I actually schedule thinking time in my calendar, uninterrupted, focused, concentrated time, where whether I'm hiking, I'm going for a walk, I'm whatever I'm doing, but I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about with my thoughts. And you'd be amazed when you start to journal what you're thinking about and put your thoughts down on paper. Look, man, these thoughts, I got to upgrade these thoughts. They don't work for me. They don't serve me. They don't support me.
There's 2 major things here that you mentioned. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you said there. The 2 major things. The first thing is something I actually do. Maybe it's something in the Canadian water. I'm not sure what it is, right? But I had a personal quote. I still do. Without integrity, you have nothing.
Absolutely.
And I'm the same way. If I say I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, I will be there at a certain time. No need to send out invitations or not an invitation, but reminders or any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I show up, right? I always show up. It's to show up and be reliable. It tells the world what you're about. Right. And that's not very hard to do. It's not very hard to do. We find that many people just don't do it. And it's a key differentiator when you are.
Success is not something you go out in the world to pursue. Success is something you attract into your life by the person that you become. So focus on becoming an attractive person. Right? It's all about building relationships. We live in a world today where, unfortunately, a lot of business and internet industries are transactional. I'll give you an example. So this morning, I'll use LinkedIn, social media channel. I had 4 people reach out to me to friend request me on LinkedIn. So I accepted the 4 people. Boom, 2 of them automatically went into my inbox, pitching me on their product and service. I delete them. It's transactional. It's like a one-night stand. There's no relationship equity that's built. People have to get to know you, like you, and trust you. And so what happens is these people are broke. I can bet on it. They're financially broke. Why? Because they don't care about you. It's what's in it for them, and they're just transactional, and they're just running the numbers. And, I was once there in my 20s, and I know the hustle, I know the struggle, I know the adversity that they go through, and the stress levels. But the key thing today is relationship equity. People have to get to know you, like you, and trust you. And also, too, successful people like you and I, we don't want to be pitched or sold. We want to be educated, and we want to be informed. We're smart. Yeah. We've got teams around us. We'll do our due diligence in our discovery process. So educate us, inform us, teach us something we don't know. Teach us how to, do asset protection or risk mitigation, right? Very, very important. But don't start pitching and selling us, because you'll just turn us off and shut us down. And we'll just, we're done. Like it's educate us and inform us is such a different thing versus, and I used to pitch and sell until I got, confronted one day by a high net worth investor who was looking to raise some money, and he shut me down in a heartbeat and said, listen, stop it. The money's walking out the door here right now. I'm not writing a check today. I'm going to give you $50,000 of valuable information. Shut up and stop pitching and selling me, and start to educate me, inform me, and build a relationship with me. And
it's interesting. Wow. It's just interesting you said that. When that person said that to you, and I'm sure they were very abrupt. They were not. So did you get all? Did you get butthurt over that discussion? Did you get all all pissy about it, or did you what was your general impression? And
good question. Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. So I was traveling, raising money for a startup company I was involved in. I was flat broke financially. I was staying at the Holiday Inn. I couldn't even afford to go get a cab to go see the guy. So I had to meet him, and I snuck him into the hotel, the Holiday Inn, that had free continental breakfast because it was right by the airport. And so when I brought him in, I was completely out of integrity, completely lying, out of integrity, brought the guy in, and there's a sign right on the wall for registered hotel guests only to use the continental breakfast. And when he walked in, he sat down with me, and I'm flat broke. I'm stressed out. I'm just hustling for my next dollar because I don't know where it's going to come from. And I just lunged on this guy because I only had 45 minutes with this guy. And I lunged in on him, and he just said, listen, you need to shut up and stop. He goes, let's deal with your out of integrities. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, first of all, let's look at the sign on the wall. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not a registered guest of this hotel. You stuck me in because you couldn't afford to buy breakfast. So let's just deal with that out of integrity. Next thing is, you lied to me because you said that, you're doing really well. You're flat broke. I can bet on it. And he was. I was flat broke at the time. And so he just called me out on it because he could see all these out of integrities in my life. And that's how I discovered that when he confronted me, my ego wanted to get confrontational and defensive and put the gloves off like in hockey. But a part of me was like, man, and this is what I really discovered, was that time will either promote you or time will expose you. It's just a matter of time whether you get promoted or you get exposed. And guess what? I got exposed that day. Yeah. He exposed me. And I'm grateful for that now. I was upset at the time, but I'm grateful. And so time will either promote you or time will expose you. So people always ask me, hey, what do you think about this? Time will either promote or time will expose. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, that's right. I know it's funny. I had a similar confrontation with actually someone that was pitching me. And I tend to be very direct. And I was direct that day. I mean, I wasn't a jerk about it. I explained to them, look, I coach people. I help people out with some of this stuff. Here's something that you should probably not ever do ever again. And I explained to them what it was, right? And they got all upset, and they left the meeting. I'm like, well, okay. I asked them specifically, I said, hey, I'm going to give you some advice that you should take away with you. It's very valuable advice because nobody will tell you this. I told you, and they get upset. I don't care. But it's kind of like it's taking that information and I guess choosing how it impacts you, right? Yes. And you, I mean, you, just like you said, you're upset when you first heard it, but then you realize that was gold. That was absolutely he helped you. He helped you.
Yeah. I have a team of women around me that work with me that run all the day-to-day operations of my group of companies. And I learned this from Kevin Leary, Mr. Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, years ago. Behind the scenes, Kevin and I were talking one day. He's Canadian, he's from Toronto, lives in the U.S. and lives got houses around the world, but he's Canadian citizen. And him and I met one down in Vancouver here a few years ago. And Kevin was telling me that behind the scenes, he's got women running this group of companies. And so we run a really tight ship, right? And I can't get away with nothing. Like, and I'm grateful for that these women hold me to a high level of account of integrity, but they're also my due diligence team, because I see the benefit I see the good in everybody, but the women, they have a strong women's intuition. And I've learned, it's cost me a lot of money over the years of not listening to it. So I've learned to shut my mouth up and trust the process now with the women as part of my due diligence discovery process. But it makes a big difference when they're around you. They see things that you don't see that are your blind spots. And that's one thing I've learned in my own life now is that I meet on a quarterly basis with a friend of mine here in Vancouver. And we have a quarterly meeting 4 times a year. We get together, and this guy's phenomenal. I buy him dinner and he sits down with me. We have 1 hour and a half, 2 hour meeting for dinner. And we talk about lots of different things. But one of the things that he does is his gift to me during the dinner meeting is to show me where I have blind spots. And he's so good at it. And he's just got that innate ability. That's one of his gifts in the world. And I'm so grateful. I feel beat up when I leave the meeting sometimes, but I journal afterwards. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity that he will show me those potential blind spots to risk mitigate in my life and to hold me to a higher standard of who I am as a human being.
Yes. And then what you do with all this information and all this stuff that you're gaining is go into that second thing you mentioned before, which I didn't forget, right? And that is documenting your promises, right? Other people call them goals, but but it's promises to yourself, which I think is more potent than just calling them goals. It's many people don't do that. I do that. I do it in December is when I do it, right? And I do it when I'm not, like I'm purposely not where I live. I'm usually Florida, Colombia, somewhere where it's warm, right? Somewhere warm, outside of your element, in a whole different environment. And if somebody listening at home right now, maybe you don't want to do it at home. Maybe you do it at you go to a place where there's wealth. You go to your local Ritz-Carlton. You go to the best restaurant you can go to and order a drink there, and you write down what you want to see manifest in your life. Absolutely. It's funny because these are things that, I do that as well, right? And it's made all the difference in my world. I'll show something to you. This is my home office here. I'll show you something that most have never seen before. I'm going to show you something. So I have a thing called a must-meet list. And this is 100 people from all walks of humanity, from all over the world. A few of them have passed away over the last year or so. But I have a few of these boards, and this is called my must-meet list. So I play this game of all the different people that I want to meet. And when I meet them, we put a star beside their name. And so just like people have America's Most Wanted list or a missing child list, I have a must-meet list of people, because it's not what you know, it's who you know, and proximity is power. And so I have this, and sometimes I'll post this on social media, and we play a little game, and people are like, oh my gosh, I cut that person's hair, or I'm the massage therapist, or I'm the chiropractor, they're my neighbor, or they're my relative, or I know them, and then all of a sudden they connect with me, and I'll have a virtual meeting or I'll have an in-person meeting. And my value is just, how can I find value to contribute to those people's lives? And some of those people, I just want to have a conversation with them, find out how they got to where they got to. But I post it on there because it's a visual for me to actually always see that. Yeah, that's right. Now, how do you get yourself ready to meet some of these people then? Do you have to pump yourself up? Do you have to?
Yeah, great question. So what I do is, I'll just show you. I use an iPhone. So what I do is, you probably won't see it on screen, but what I do is so every person I want to meet, I build a profile. So I'll put your contact information. I'll find out what people's birth dates are, what anniversaries, if they're married, what their spouse or partner, significant other's name is, their children's name is, points of interest. So I collect data points on the person, points of interest, and then people that we know in common. So I link them to people I know in common that are in my phone. And then, people they know that I would love to meet. Right. So people they know that I'd love to meet in terms of, leveraging that. And then also, what are the top 5 or 10 questions I would have to ask this person? Right. So sometimes when I meet a lot of different famous people, for example, or very high profile people, I'll say to them, I said, what's the most frequently asked question that you get? I want to ask you, out of all the questions you get, what do people stop and ask you for the most? And you'd be surprised what sometimes people will tell you. Right. And I just find ways when I meet people, how do I become memorable versus forgettable? Yes. See, most people, especially if they're high profile and they're meeting lots of people, you're forgettable. They're just meeting so many people, it's just a blur after a while. But how do I stand out at that conference of 1,000 people, or they're doing some event, or they're on some panel or some conference they're at? How do I become memorable versus forgettable? How do the next time they see me, or how do I meet somebody and they're like, hey, listen, we're hanging around for a couple extra hours here at this conference. Would love to have lunch or dinner with you, right? Proximity is power. So I'm always forward thinking, how do I get access to that person, but provide value by building relationship equity and being a go-giver, not a go-getter, but also become memorable versus forgettable, and become relational with that person. So they want to meet with me. It's like people say, oh, I want to meet so-and-so. Great. It's not about meeting so-and-so. It's how do you get the next meeting? How do you start to build that relationship equity with them, which is important.
Yes. So do you have like a go-to question then that you ask to sort of plant that seed of unforgettability? Yeah.
One of the questions I ask is, what's been their biggest adversity or challenge or failure on the road to where you've got to so far today? And so how I set the question up is that, would it be okay if I ask you a personal question? And then I pause and feel like, what's he going to ask me? So I ask for permission. Would it be okay if I ask you a personal question? One of the things I'll ask people, for example, is that, would it be okay if I ask you a personal question? How did you know that when you're unique, special, or different? Because, you're building rockets for Mars, Elon Musk. Like you're not normal. Like that's not
right. It's not normal, right?
Right. You're like Sir Richard Branson. You got this. Like you and I talk about, what you're doing in your real estate. That's not normal. So there's a part of you in your life, whether it's in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s or your teenage years or younger formative years, where you're thinking, man, I'm a little different than everybody else here. I'm not the same kid in this class. I'm not the same kid in this university or college. There's something different, unique, or special about me. Right. So I ask them that, and I ask for permission so that I have them reflect and thinking, yeah, I had this defining moment one time where I was down and out, and during that down and out period, right, those dark days, I discovered something for myself. So everybody has something unique story because, like me, it's childhood trauma, right? Like I had childhood trauma in my life where there was things where I was not good enough, not smart enough. And so I had these labels and things. So that childhood trauma played into my success because I always had this internal dialogue of voices in my head that you're never good enough. You're stupid. You're not smart enough. So I'll show you, I'll probe you. And then when I started becoming successful, what it was for me was, it was never about the money. I just didn't want to be told what to do. Don't tell me what to do. I want to live life on my own terms. I want to go to bed when I'm tired, and I want to wake up when I'm done sleeping.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up very similar way. So I get exactly what you're talking about. What you're talking about. So now we covered a lot of ground, and I think we could even talk even longer. But we'll leave it for part two. That's what we'll do. We'll leave the rest for part two. So I guess the one thing that I do want to ask you is, we covered a lot of stuff, as I said before. What would be your one piece of bulletproof advice that you would offer to someone listening right now?
Yeah. So the key thing is that anything you really, really want in your life is going to come from strangers. Strangers are everything you want, need, and desire in your life. And it's about two things. One is promises and requests. Promise is what you give word to. What do you promise to yourself? I promise you this by this date and time. That's your promise. And then the request is you go out and you request to other people. Because all we are, if you look at human beings from the International Space Station, looking down on the planet, we look at all these people running around in the meat suits and their avatars. We're just a network of conversations as human beings. And so the key thing is to consider with all this is you go out and you make requests. And when you make a request, people either will accept your request, decline your request, or counteroffer your request. So just start making requests to people and let them accept, decline, or counteroffer. And you'd be amazed that when you start building relationships with people and playing the request game, how much your life will unfold and blossom over a period of time.
Yes. And I think something to even add to that too is to make sure when you do make a request, do it from a position of value to them, as opposed to prioritizing yourself first. Because many people do that. Many people, they'll reach out, but it's really, they're making a request that it's a one-sided request. That's all it is, right? And you can't do that if you ever want to see success. I mean, that's my opinion anyway. I mean, that's just what I see it as anyway. So good. All right. Well, guys, if you want to reach out to Darren, you can reach him via his website at darrenjacklin.com. Hope we got some insight on how you overcome major challenges, how to really plan for the life that you want to live, right? It's certainly feasible. It's certainly doable. And, it's something that really the most successful people pursue in their own lives as well. So thanks for listening, guys. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
No information in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are limited to accredited or sophisticated investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure and subscription documentation and subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice.
You've been listening to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had fun. Make sure to visit our Apple Podcast page and leave us a 5-star review. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. For real estate coaching, events, and resources, hit up bulletproofcashflow.com. Till next time.